Yes, this is a blockbuster announcement. The Supreme Court has voted to overturn Roe v. Wade.
The Supreme Court today, an historic upheaval. In a sweeping ruling that overturned a half a century of precedents, 5 justices ended the right of American women to choose abortion under the Constitution.
That's right. The Supreme Court has officially overturned Roe v. Wade.
This is an historic moment. Amen? And I'm afraid that the warfare is only intensifying.
On June 24th, 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States overturned Roe v. Wade. Here are 8 things you need to know about this decision. First, it sounds absolutely crazy to say this, but after 50 years of failure by Republicans to overturn Roe v. Wade, even when there was a majority of Republican-appointed justices on the Supreme Court.
Then in 1992, the Supreme Court upheld Roe by reaffirming a right to abortion in the Planned Parenthood versus Casey decision. Of the 9 justices on the court in 1992, 8 of them had been appointed by Republican presidents. Not only that, since 1973, the court has never had a Democrat-appointed majority. Of the 15 justices appointed since Roe, Republican presidents appointed 11 of them.
The events that finally led to the end of Roe v. Wade were the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States and his appointing Justices Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court.
So that includes Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and that includes the Supreme Court's newest, brilliant, principled woman, Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
In short, God used Donald Trump to overturn this great evil in the United States. Donald Trump. That just sounds weird to say. Second, immediately after the decision was announced, protesters outside the Supreme Court chanted illegitimate. We can expect that many will not accept this legal decision, and that there will be protests and violence in response.
Letter signed by radical abortion group Jane's Revenge declares open season on pro-life pregnancy centers.
The fight is far from over. Here are some media responses to this event.
We want to recognize right off the bat that not everyone agrees on this particular issue, but it is at its core about whether you have the right to make decisions about another person's reproductive choices. That's at its core. That's what this is about.
This court has lost legitimacy. They have burned whatever legitimacy they may still have had.
I'm devastated and terrified, and so many women and so many girls are going to die because of this.
All I could think was, thank God I have at least a choice.
Women are no longer people.
I think that women should have the right. I'm not going to get on a soapbox and give you some very flowery speech. That's the way that I see the world, and that's what I think is right.
To me, this is just pure insanity. Pure insanity. We are going backwards in time. We are literally going backwards in time. It makes no sense how anybody thinks it's their right to tell a woman what to do with her body. I just don't get it.
Third, 13 states had trigger bans that would be put into effect immediately if Roe v. Wade were ever overturned. These trigger bans will now ban abortion within 30 days. These 13 states are Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky.
The trigger ban in Tennessee is fairly restrictive. It pushes women toward self-managed abortion. They're moving their abortions to doing pills at home. They kind of facilitates the switch to self-managed abortion.
5 other states had recently passed laws targeting abortion that had been blocked by courts. These laws may now go into effect now that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. These 5 states are Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa. Fourth, James White gets it right when he tweeted, "Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm Scottish. We can rejoice and be thankful. But let's also be real. Unless there is a mighty move of the Spirit of God resulting in changed hearts and minds amongst the younger generations in the U.S., this is but a brief blip on the radar screen. While we should certainly celebrate the justices of this Supreme Court decision, we should also recognize that increasingly the youth of this country are successfully being indoctrinated with lies, which means the fight is not at all over. If you like this video, a subscribe helps spread the truth. Unless something changes culturally, an enormous percentage of people in this culture will continue to support and fight for the death that Roe v. Wade represents. And it may only be a matter of time until something similar to Roe v. Wade becomes law once again.
For those who happen to get pregnant in the process, the platform advocates that you kill the baby at the will of the mother, up and including the 9th month, leaving God out, advocating abortion, advocating homosexuality, advocating free sexual conduct and government-provided condoms so that everybody can do what they want. That is literally creating a platform out of what God hates. When you have an advocacy of support for the slaughter of infants and homosexuality and complete sexual freedom, you have a formula for divine judgment.
Fifth, we should recognize that this Supreme Court decision was absolutely just and right. Roe v. Wade was a terrible decision in the first place, and the Constitution does not at all make provision for this kind of evil.
First, understand that Roe v. Wade is not the law of the land. Have you ever seen anything about a right to abortion in the Constitution? Of course not. Even the Supreme Court has admitted that it's not in the text, but claims it is in a right to privacy, which is in the penumbra of the Constitution. What is that? Well, when you shine a light on an object, the shadow behind it is called an umbra, and the fuzzy shadow outside of that is called a penumbra. Of course, that's just a really twisted way of saying it's not in there. In fact, the Constitution says the opposite and defends all human life, preborn or otherwise, in the 14th Amendment by saying that no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws.
Sixth, the U.S. Department of Justice officially released a dissent in response to this Supreme Court decision. Ben Shapiro tweeted, "The DOJ has now released a long Merrick Garland dissent. Anyone who believes that institutional trust is under threat should take note that the DOJ is now an explicitly political tool." Seventh, let's take a deep breath and look at what's going on in Twitter world regarding all of this. According to Breaking 911, Nancy Pelosi says, "There is no point in saying good morning because it certainly is not one."
This morning, the radical Supreme Court is eviscerating Americans' rights and endangering their health and safety. Today, the Republican-controlled Supreme Court has achieved their dark, extreme goal of ripping away a woman's right to make their own reproductive health decisions. Radical Republicans are charging ahead with their crusade to criminalize health freedom.
In response, Allie Beth Stuckey tweeted, "Devout Catholic Nancy Pelosi literally chokes up explaining that there is no longer a constitutional right to dismember children." Matt Walsh tweeted, "History will look back on today like we look back on the abolition of slavery and the liberation of the concentration camps. It is a day when abject evil has suffered a major defeat, and many innocent humans will live and be free because of it." Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the representative of the most radical wing of the Democratic Party, tweeted, "Overturning Roe and outlawing abortions will never make them go away. It only makes them more dangerous, especially for the poor and marginalized. People will die because of this decision, and we will never stop until abortion rights are restored in the United States of America." Albert Mohler tweeted, "Here is the most important sentence from Justice Thomas's concurring opinion. Substantive due process conflicts with that contextual command and has harmed our country in many ways. Accordingly, we should eliminate it from our jurisprudence at the earliest opportunity." Similarly, Ben Shapiro tweeted, "Thomas's concurrence is fantastic. It's a complete rejection of substantive due process, and every word is worth reading." What is substantive due process? Substantive due process is a principle in United States constitutional law that allows courts to protect certain fundamental rights from government interference, even if procedural protections are present or the rights are enumerated elsewhere in the U.S. Constitution. In successful cases, the Supreme Court recognizes a constitutionally based liberty and considers laws that seek to limit that liberty to be unenforceable or limited in scope. Critics of substantive due process decisions usually assert that there is no textual basis in the Constitution for such protection, and that such liberties should be left under the purview of the more politically accountable branches of government. Eighth, we should recognize that ultimately, the only answer to abortion is the true Christian biblical worldview that is both logically consistent and teaches that humans have value from conception. Secular arguments are fatally limited in what they can ultimately accomplish.
What do you say to her when she steals your thunder on the abortion stops a beating heart argument? What do you say to her when she stands there and says, yeah, you're right, I agree, and my position has not changed? What do we have then? That's why I believe it's important for us to have a biblical, theological understanding and approach to this issue and the way that we address this issue with our culture at large.